time, probably that would not have been possible.
Yeah,
That's true.
okay, it's about time. Let's begin proper. Hello everyone. Very good afternoon. My name is Wilson. I'm from RP's Office Entrepreneurship Development Department. You're tuning into our Fireside chat featuring startups, Polybee, and AI Palette. Before we begin, a bit of background how this talk came about. Right, in line with RP's vision of deepening technology innovation enterprise efforts on agri-food innovation. We were looking for speakers to talk about topics like deep tech, agri-tech, and then food innovation. So our partners, SGInnovate, they said, hey, you got to speak to Siddharth and Som. You know, they are real experts in this field, and most importantly, they're so generous to share their real life startup experiences. So for the students and staff and over here who are not too sure what SGInnovate is about, a quick introduction. SGInnovate is a government-linked organization where their mission is to help entrepreneurs build deep tech startups to solve the world's hardest problems. So I'll be moderating the chat for the next 30 to 40 minutes, and then we'll be inviting questions from the audience. So without further ado, I would like to welcome the speakers in our panel today: Siddharth, founder, CEO of Polybee, and Som, co-founder, CEO of AI Palette. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Wilson. Great to be here to talk to the young minds today.
All right. So Som, maybe let's start with you. Tell us about yourself and AI Palette.
Right, sure. So I'm Som, the co-founder and CEO of AI Palette. So I come with a background in the food industry. Spent now almost a decade in the food industry, having worked across markets in different parts of Asia. And during my time while working there, I saw that the current way of product innovation in the food industry hasn't changed much. It's same since the last 30 to 40 years. It's a very traditional industry. On the other hand, technology has made a lot of progress. We see AI and machine learning, which helps in solving a lot of problems, and could see that the industry can be disrupted using AI and ML. And so that's when I decided to quit my corporate job, and me and Himanshu, we started AI Palette together. So what we do at AI Palette is we help the food companies with their new product innovation. So for example, if a company like Pepsi, they want to launch a new juice in a market like Thailand, our platform will help them decide what kind of juice they should launch next. And to make it possible, we use artificial intelligence and machine learning to understand the food trends in real time. And also not just the trend, we also understand why something is trending. If a particular type of product is getting popular, why it is getting popular, and that helps the companies to really cut down on their product innovation process and get into the market faster and with more confidence.
Right. So exactly how does this work? Like, I mean, it's like 4 p.m. I mean, it's my snack time. How do you know what I would like? I mean, I don't even know what I would like myself. You know.
Right. Very good question. So what we do is that we take the big data around food. So food, as we know, is a really popular topic, right? People love to talk and share about food. So there is a lot of data available in the public domain around consumer behavior in terms of like what type of products people are consuming, what type of products they are liking. So that's one set of data that we use. So the other is around like what is being sold in the restaurants and cafes, and also the products that is being sold in the retail stores. And if you look into these data sources, they run into million, and it's impossible for one human to draw correlation between different data points to understand what people really want. But that's where the power of big data analytics and AI helps, where it takes in all of that data, ingests it, and identifies patterns out of it. And when you see finally into the platform, you can really see, okay, this particular product is getting popular. This is something that the consumers really love, and thus helps the companies to decide, okay, maybe this is the juice that should be launched next.
So give us an idea, like how long does it, you mentioned, let's say Pepsi, right? How long does it take for their product to get to market, and how does your solution help them make it more efficient?
Right. So I'll first explain like how it is being done traditionally and how a solution like us really give them the efficiency and the scale. So in a traditional way, what they would do, they'll first go to the market, talk to the consumers. They'll talk to maybe 30, 40, maximum 100 consumers. And they will ask questions like what type of products do you like and why do you like them? What do you consume? And from that, they will try to understand and make some conclusion about that market. Now, in a market which is several million people, 100 is not even a drop in the ocean. It's not truly representative of what the whole population wants. So that's challenge number one. Challenge number two is that to do all this exercise, it will take them easily 2 to 3 months because the whole inefficiency that lies in terms of identifying how they will collect the data, who are the different people they should go and talk to, and finally when they get the data to analyze and get a report. On the other hand, with our technology, what they can do is that you just log into the platform. And in real time, you can see what are the consumer preferences, what people really want, and what are the trends. So in one single snapshot, you get a really good understanding of what's happening in that market. And the number of data points that typically are there runs into millions. So a strong data-backed decision. And I can share a real life example like what we just recently did. So this was related to the alcoholic beverage category. I hope the audience is above the legal drinking age. Yeah.
Let's assume they are.
Okay. So this was for that Smirnoff Ice drink, which is a flavored alcoholic beverage drink. So Smirnoff Ice, they wanted to launch a new variant in the Thailand market. And during the period of April and May is when they wanted to identify this. And if you remember, that was the time when coronavirus was at its peak. There was circuit breaker and lockdown measures. So any type of on-field research was completely ruled out. But using our technology, they are able to identify and see which are the flavors that the consumers really love and which are the flavors which have a potential to grow in the future. So then they were able to finally identify 2 new flavors, which will be there in the market in December this year, just in time for the Christmas and New Year break. So from the moment, we worked with them somewhere around May, and the product will be there in the market in December. So in 6 months' time, a product will be hitting the market. One of the fastest product launches that we have seen in the food industry.
Wow, that's really fascinating. I mean, you're almost like a fortune teller in the food industry. Like, you could predict what's going to be popular and what's going to be successful in the market. I'm just thinking, where do you get these kind of data from? Is it from like the Facebook page? You'll be sort of measuring the sentiment, or or some discussion threads online?
So primarily 3 types of data we collect. One is the social data. And then the search data. That's a very big set of data, which is understanding of the consumers. Then we also look into the menus and the recipes of the restaurants, which is also a very good indicator of what is popular in a particular type of market. And finally, we look into the retail products which are out there. So in stores like Fair Price or Cold Storage, what type of products which are available. And from this varied data sources, we make correlation and identify patterns.
Wow. Amazing. Thanks so much. Okay, let's Siddharth. I've got a few questions for Polybee. It's one of the most innovative agri-tech startups I've seen. Could you share with us a little bit more what Polybee does?
Sure. Thanks, Wilson, for having me. It's great to be here. I was just thinking if I can quickly share my screen here. Is that okay?
Sure.
I'll just give a quick 3-minute introduction on the company.
Yep.
All right. Is it visible, my screen? Can you see the screen?
Yep.
Okay. Great. So Polybee is basically building micro drones for autonomous pollination, and crop monitoring in indoor agriculture. And we're focused on indoor agriculture for a bunch of reasons. Because it's the sector which is growing at double-digit rates across the globe. Yeah, and it is that sector which allows us to grow more from less. If you just compare the sheer productivity of greenhouses, it is 10 times more than the open field counterparts. If you look at vertical farms, some companies claim 100 times improvement in productivity as compared to open field agriculture. So the case for indoor agriculture is very strong. And the regions where you can actually grow grow indoors in farms, is which is best suited is actually near cities. Because going forward by 2040, nearly 2/3 of the world's population is going to be urban, right? So we need to grow closer to cities, and it is something that we've learned the hard way through this pandemic. Now, if you look at the kind of crops that you can grow and the kind of crops that you must grow in indoor farms, it is fruits and vegetables. Because there's a global deficit of production of fruits and veggies, to a point where everyone should have a certain level of fruits and veggies in their diet, right? So, for instance, we should have 50% of portions that are fruits and vegetables. But if you look at all the countries here in blue, they do not even have sufficient supply. Leave alone the delivery to these populations. Not even supply is there in place to satisfy this dietary requirement. So, that is one of the reasons why we should really look at fruits and vegetables as a market, because number one, as populations grow more and more conscious of nutrition, the demand is only going to go up. And two is we need to grow all of these crops closer to cities, because there's other issues related to fruits and vegetables, which is the fact that they are perishable and have a very short shelf life. So the issue is that as the sector grows near urban areas, we're going to run into one big problem, which is pollination. Because if you look at the kind of crops that are best suited for growing indoors, these are crops like tomatoes, pepper, berry crops, eggplant, and so on, all of which depend on pollination. Now, there are certain parts of the world which are blessed with access to bumblebees, such as Western Europe or Northern America, but that's not the case for majority of the world. For instance, Southeast Asia, Australia, South Asia, even all of these regions do not have access to bumblebees. And when indoor farming grows in these sectors, they're going to run into the problem of pollination. Now, that's for greenhouses. If you look closer to home, which is in Singapore, the only way we can grow anything here is in indoor vertical farms, right? So all of us have been hearing about all the steps that are being taken to, march towards the goal of 30 by 30, which is growing 30% of local nutritional requirements locally in Singapore by 2030. Now, since indoor vertical farming is the only way to grow anything here, we have to make sure that we're able to grow a diverse set of crops, right? And that means, again, growing pollination dependent crops as well, such as the ones that I mentioned, tomatoes, eggplant, and pepper, and so on. Now, again, the issue is that you can't use natural pollinators in an indoor environment. The reason is that bees need UV spectrum to navigate, right? That's how they actually find where the flowers are. Now, in an indoor environment where there is no sunlight, there is no UV light either, right? So bees have no way to find where the flowers are to pollinate. So that's a big issue, right? There's no way of pollinating naturally in indoor farming at all. So our thesis is that to automate pollination, we need certain capabilities in place, such as number one is having a fully autonomous solution, because the whole point is to eliminate labor out of this. Number two is having a platform which is capable of pollinating precisely, because unless you do that, you're not going to really improve productivity in horticulture. And number three is having a very high throughput capacity, which means you should be able to pollinate a lot of flowers in a very short time. And the reason is that pollination is time sensitive. Every flower has only a couple of days where it has to be pollinated. So based on these capabilities that need to be in place, we evaluated all the options that are available to us in terms of automation, and the one that made most sense economically was drones. So that's why we are building autonomous micro drones which can fly precisely even in GPS denied indoor environments. And we plan to offer this pollination as a service, and that's how we aim to lower the capital expenditure for companies, right? So they don't have to really worry about spending on the infrastructure, but they can just subscribe to such a service and not worry, and sort of, pollination is taken care of after that. So initially we started working with the Singapore Food Agency, who provided us with pilot support, and that's where we got started. That's where we first completed our proof of concept early last year. And following that, we were funded by Temasek Foundation through their Eco-Prosperity Grant, which supports projects that work on urban sustainability. So, when you think about it, 10 years down the line, it will only seem natural that a solution for artificial pollination was first developed in Singapore, where there was no option but to grow locally. And it's a place where such challenges are seen as opportunities. So to be very honest, I think Polybee is entirely a product of NUS, and we are really indebted to SFA and Temasek Foundation for their support so early on in our venture. So, we're looking at pollinating a few crops. We've already worked extensively on strawberries, and we already have like a first, I would say, version of our solution that works on strawberries. And we've already started working on tomatoes and pepper as well. And we've done some initial work, and we've already seen improvements of more than 50% when it comes to pollination done manually in terms of yields. So that's already a significant improvement, and that kind of is already a promising sign for the solution to be scalable, even when the farms are as huge as a few hectares in size. So we've already completed a pilot trial with a major seed company earlier this year, and we have various pilots lined up in the next few months and years. In fact, we were planning a few this year, but given how things have panned out, it was a bit challenging to execute them. But we've seen a very strong market pull for the solution that we're building. So that's basically a quick introduction on the company.
Right, that's amazing. That's so futuristic and almost like a sci-fi movie kind of thing.
Yeah, I get that often. People often mention that Black Mirror episode, wherein they have all these tiny bees who go around massacring people. But we're not into that. We're here for good reasons.
Nice. So I want to ask Som, talking about technology and deep tech, how would you explain deep tech to a non-technical person or a what they call a non-scientist, if there was ever this term?
Right. Correct. So, first disclaimer, unlike Siddharth, I don't come with a technical background. I come from a business background. So I'll try as much as to explain in a layman term something which I understand myself. And probably after that, I'll request Siddharth to give his perspective. So when it comes to technology companies and deep tech companies, there is a fundamental difference. Technology now is present everywhere. So more or less any type of business you do, there will be a technology which will be enabling it. So if you look into the most successful tech companies today, the likes of Uber, Airbnb, Grab, all of them use technology, but they are not deep tech companies because they've used a technology which was already existing to innovate and come out with a new business model which was not existing before. The technology was not new and innovative. The technology was existing, but the business model was new and innovative. So that's like normal, that was like the typical technology companies. The deep tech companies are those companies which are built on a very specific scientific discovery or a meaningful engineering innovation. So something which has not been done before, something which was probably either present in the form of research in the academia, something which has been attempted for the first time. And that's why we see most of these deep tech companies trying to do something which is fundamentally different from what has been done in the past. And these deep tech companies, if they are successful, they'll change the face of the world in different ways. And that's why you see these deep tech companies trying to do and make the world a better place. So that's, in simple terms, my understanding of deep tech versus just tech companies.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Siddharth, what's your perspective?
Yeah, I think Som has given a pretty cogent sort of explanation of deep tech companies. So Yeah, I think I'll just add a little bit to that. Is like you mentioned, I think the core is defined by the fact that you're trying to bring to market a piece of technology which involves significant investment on development, a significant investment on research, and the time to market is longer than traditional companies. And that's primarily because your sort of recipe for the technologies is unprecedented. The world hasn't seen it before at all. So I think that's clearly what Som has pretty eloquently already shared. I think the other bit is that deep tech ventures often are aiming at solving problems that are quote unquote important, right? So for instance, you could be working on trying to simulate protein folding, which is extremely ambitious. It's a problem which is still open-ended. There's no clear ways to go about it. And that is a classic example of what a deep tech venture would look to solve, right? Or looking at problems in maybe gene editing, such as using CRISPR-Cas9 for a very specific purpose, or even in robotics, such as autonomous driving. These are unsolved problems for which there's no clear answer. So I think that is something that all deep tech ventures share. The other bit is that when I say important, they aim to tackle issues which aim to have very huge markets, right? So we're talking about, for instance, transportation, we're talking about healthcare, we're talking about agriculture, we're talking about communications. All of these markets are massive. So the case is very strong to invest in such a technology, and the risk is usually on the side of building the technology in the first place, right? So as Soma has, I think he broke it down very neatly in terms of the tech and the business model. Right. So I think the case for the market size and building a business model is very strong, but the first step, the first order of business is to get the technology in place. So I think that is something that deep tech ventures share, wherein the markets are huge. The question is, can you build the tech for it in time?
Great, awesome. Thanks for sharing. Okay. So I would like to bring our conversation back to the time when you all started, right? And for this segment, I think we have some pictures to share. Siddharth, if you don't mind, I'll share my screen here.
Yeah, for sure. Go for it.
Oops. Give me a second. Okay, so can you see my screen? Is my screen showing up? All right, cool. Yeah. So let's start with you. What was your startup journey like?
Right. So as I had mentioned that I was working in the corporate, and that's when I had the first idea, and I realized that every customer, irrespective of their size or the type of food products they are selling and their country, all of them had the same problem, which was like how they can innovate faster, how they can understand the consumers better and create products which the consumers would really want and love. So I could see the problem, and I knew that there's a big opportunity, but I didn't know how to build the tech because I'm a business person. So I had to look for a co-founder. So when I had quit my job, I went through an accelerator where I met my co-founder and CTO Himanshu. So together he comes with a background in AI and machine learning. And together we saw that we have pretty complementary skills, and we both of us are excited by the vision of creating products or identifying products using AI, which the consumers would really love to eat, both of us being big-time foodies ourselves. So when we started, it was just the two of us who wanted to solve this big problem around it. And we had an idea like how we could solve it. And we started approaching the corporates ourselves first to validate the ideas. And after the validation is there to get the first few customers. And I would love to mention our first customer that we got. The first client is always exciting. So this was a client in one of the large beverage companies in Singapore. And we had a meeting with their global innovation head. He was traveling down from Europe over here. So it's just both of us went there. We talked about our vision and what we are trying to build. And we are pretty open and transparent about what we are trying to do, what we have today, and what we don't have today. And at the end of the meeting, we told them you have met 100% of the company. It's just two of us. But they loved us as a team. They loved the idea of what we are trying to do, and they gave us our first business. And it was a 5-figure sum to identify the food trends around a couple of markets in Asia. And that's how our journey has been. Then we slowly started building the team. We got our first funding from SGInnovate, AgFunder, one of the world's leading food tech VCs, and also other VCs. And now we have a team spread across 2 different locations. We have our headquarters in Singapore. We have another office in India, and we have our clients spread across 8 different markets in 3 different continents.
Is your team the picture on the right-hand side?
Yeah, right now that's 40% of the team. Now the team is 24 people.
Nice. So share with us how did it feel to have your first customer on board?
Right. So it was a big feeling that, okay, what we are trying to build, actually there is a demand for it. Somebody really wants that problem to be solved, because a lot of time it's easy to think that, okay, I have this idea and I think this is a problem and everybody will go and pay for it. But until and unless you get the first check, you are not really sure. So this first check really gave us the confidence that, okay, what we need is really important. And it also helped us in raising further money from the investors, because then the investors saw that, okay, if a big corporate and MNC is ready to pay just a team of 2 people to build something for them, then definitely there is a need for this kind of product.
Right. So how do you use your, you mentioned you were working with food companies before you eventually started out on your own. How did you use your previous experience, your corporate experience, to help build your startup?
Right. So the corporate experience helped me in actually knowing what are the pain points. So if you look into the startup world, typically the startups that are formed is based on a pain point which the founders know themselves. Right. So, for example, the guy when they started Airbnb, they knew themselves how it's difficult to rent hotels which are expensive, and they came out with that idea. So for me, it really helped in knowing that these businesses, they really have this problem. I was pretty certain that if we could build a solution, it will really help. So that was one way where it really helped me. And B, also having a work experience where I was actually dealing with the same set of companies whom we are trying to solve the problem. I really had a good understanding of how they do business, who are the people who are responsible for making the decisions, what kind of problem and pain points that they have. So that really helped us in terms of getting into the market quickly, reaching out to the right stakeholders, and validating the problem that we really have.
So could you share with us what were some of the early challenges that you faced?
Right. So, if talking about the challenges, there are many challenges in a startup, but let me highlight the first few, 2, 3. So the first challenge is always to sell a new technology. When you're trying to sell a new technology, it's really, really hard, because everybody not everybody, most of the people, they don't like to be the first person to try out something new. Everybody is happy to be a follower when they can see some social proof. So when you're trying to sell a technology which has not yet been proved in the market, it's based on AI and machine learning, which people have only heard about and seen in the movies. They don't really know what to trust and what to believe. It takes monumental effort to get the first set of customer, to get the people, identify those new and early innovators, those evangelists within the organizations who really want to try out something new, even if there is a risk that it may not work out as much as they would have expected. So that's one of the biggest challenges that we faced, and we still face even today. When we are trying to approach a new customer and explain the technology. Because when you want to try out something which has already been proved and done in a traditional way, you don't get fired. Nobody gets fired for doing something which everybody else before them has done. But trying out something new means a lot of risk for them. So that's one of the challenges that we have faced. The second challenge is finding the right people with whom you want to build the company. It's not easy. You really need the people in your team who are really motivated by the vision that you believe in, the problem that you are trying to solve. People who are not just motivated by money or designation. So that's key. And one of the challenging things as a startup where you have limited funding and you are still trying to establish in the market. And the third part is building any deep tech company. It takes a lot of time, as Siddharth would have mentioned. It really takes a lot of time to build the technology and make it market ready and get into the market. So these are some of the top 3 challenges that I have faced and face even today now.
So what do you tell yourself, your mindset, you adopt to try and overcome these challenges?
Right. So we really gather our strength and courage from our early customers who really believe in us and who has given us business and continue to do so. So that gives us the strength and the belief that, okay, what we are working on is really a problem worth solving. The approach that we are taking really works. And as we get more and more validation in the market, that helps us to go forward, and we can see that a future which is bright and encouraging.
Wow, thanks. I like it so much when you are so focused on the customer.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if the customer is happy at the end of the day, everything else will fall in peace. The investments will come. You will get good people to join your company. The first thing is to get the customers.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. Siddharth, now coming to you. How did you start out? What's your journey like?
Sure. So actually, the way Polybee has come about is a bit of an aberration, if you look at it, because it's not how it's not a typical story, because firstly, I'm not solving a problem that I personally faced or I was personally affected by. It's okay if plants are not getting pollinated, I would be as happy otherwise. So it's a bit atypical how it came about. But just to share the details, so I was working as a research scientist at NUS, at a lab called Temasek Laboratories, which is funded by the defense, and we have a few research themes, and I was involved in research of unconventional drones, such as flapping wing drones. So we had one of these projects wherein we were building a hummingbird-inspired drone, which flaps its wing exactly like a hummingbird, and it's actually a very cool drone. I mean, I still love the fact that I got a chance to work on something like that. So my research was largely around aerodynamics, control systems, and I was always very keen on academic pursuits, along these lines, right? So the idea for me was simple. I would like to work here for maybe 2-3 years, publish some high quality papers, and then move on to grad school. So that was the plan, a couple of years back. But as I saw academia closely, I learned the lessons. I wouldn't have it any other way. I think there's certain things that you can only practice and refine in academia, such as critical thinking and having that rigor in reason and experimentation. I think those are great lessons to take away from academia. But I thought I had it enough, as in, I wasn't entirely sure if I want to keep doing this for 5 more years. I wasn't super convinced. But nevertheless, I had admissions in grad schools in the States, and I was in a bit of a conundrum if I should go ahead with it. So since I wasn't sure, I just deferred my admissions, and I thought, okay, let's just continue to do what I'm doing here, and let's dabble around in the free time, right? Let's see what's happening out there. Let's look at all the technologies that are important out there, and let's try to find out more about them. So in that process, I somehow just serendipitously ended up reading about agriculture as an industry. And it really stood out, how practices are so far removed from today's technologies, just because there isn't enough access, or we haven't been able to turn them into products that growers can use. And as an industry, it's just staggering how much of resources it ends up using. And the fact that we need to grow 70% more food in the next 3 decades, with the fact that fresh water is depleting, arable land is depleting. It just sounds very, very challenging. So that's why I got fascinated by the industry, started reading upon it. And around the same time, while I was, like I said, dabbling around, I took part in this program called Lean Launchpad, which I'm not sure if our listeners know, or know of, but it's basically a 10-week program where researchers are encouraged to join this kind of a module where you spend 3 hours every week on exploring the commercial potential of your projects, right? So on the one hand, I was reading about agriculture, and on the other hand, I joined this program. So it was very natural for me to explore opportunities in agriculture, right? And it's when I had read about indoor farming, especially being in Singapore. It was just about getting attention in the press and generally speaking in the media. And then I wondered, okay, indoor farming sounds very interesting, but how do they plan to grow fruit crops there, right? Because it was very non-intuitive to me that you can use bees, right? It doesn't sound right. It can't be easy to do that. So I reached out to all the leading vertical farming companies in the world, not just Singapore, in the States, Japan. And it was just a simple email. I was just saying, okay, here I am, a research scientist from Singapore, and we're exploring these commercial opportunities of pollination using drones, which is our expertise. So can you share a little bit more about this problem? And everyone started getting back. All of these big companies, such as the ones which are the most well funded in the States, everyone started getting it back and saying that this is an unsolved problem. We don't know how to do this. What are you proposing? Let's jump on a call. So I think that was the first feedback that we got, wherein that, okay, we're up to something here. Yeah, let's chase this. And that's how it started. And vertical farming was the first area that I explored, but even then I wasn't fully convinced it's big enough to start a company around it. So I was just completely pursuing it as a side project. Let's just see where it goes, right? Let's just find out where it ends. And then I ended up learning about pollination being a bigger problem, not just in vertical farming, but also in greenhouses. And then I learned about this being a problem in the seeds industry as well. So all in all, what initially seemed like a pond of opportunity was actually a sea of opportunity. And when I realized that, okay, this is big enough, it's urgent, the best way to solve it is by starting a company around it. So that's when I decided to take the leap that, okay, let's join an accelerator program here at NUS, where they're offering 100K in pre-seed funding, and I can get started there, right? I'll have some dough to play with. Let's see what comes out of it. And then that's how we completed our proof of concept. And since the results were so promising, we did end up getting the pre-seed funding, and then also raising a fund from Temasek Foundation. So, it all sort of snowballed from a very simple exercise in curiosity, which is just trying to find out more about, indoor agriculture and how pollination could be done in it, to actually, ending up to a point where, you have the resources to start a company around it, and then you're in a position to, grow your team and work with customers and deploy pilot trials.
It's just so interesting. I mean, it must be something like, pollination, right? How does a guy get interested in something like pollination? I mean, it must be totally out of your comfort zone. I mean, I think you mentioned your technical training was engineer, and you were working with drones. Was it a steep learning curve for you, pollination and Agritech? Could you share your mindset and how you went about learning and applying this new knowledge?
Yeah, sure. As you pointed out, I mean, I knew very little about pollination as much as high school biology teaches you, and as I kept reading about it, I just, it was humbling to be honest, how nuanced this process is. I'll just give you one simple example. Let's look at the pollination of avocados, right? I'm sure some knows that avocado is a very popular food product. All companies are after products based on avocados. Uh, there's a reason why that fruit is so expensive, and
Mm,
one of those reasons is pollination. Avocado flowers have, it's a cross pollinating tree, right? So you have male and female flowers which are separate. But what's more interesting is that these flowers are gender fluid. They change their sex with time. So what's male now is going to be female later on in the afternoon or something. So you have a very narrow window of 1 to 2 hours in the day where cross pollination is even theoretically possible, right? And in that time window, we are hoping that bees will go cross pollinate for us, right? So just think of the odds of actually getting an
mm,
avocado fruit in the first place. It is 300 out of 1 million. Those are the odds. An avocado tree has on an average a million flowers every year, out of which only 300 bear fruits. So it's just an example of how nuanced pollination is, and then it's so different for crops like strawberries and tomatoes, and then it's so different for crops like apple and almond. So yes, absolutely the learning curve was very steep, but because it was so humbling and because I realized that I knew so little about it is why I kept chasing it. And I also have to say I was very lucky to get help at just the right time. So Singapore Food Agency was very open to helping us out, not just with the test bed for pilot trials but also the know-how. So
mm.
one of the folks who was at SFA is now our consultant. He helps us out with the know-how in horticulture. So I have to also say that talking to people helps a lot, and just reaching out without any expectations is probably the I would say something that I something that's got this running in the first place, and got me to a point where I can even understand these things. So yeah, I think that's how I would summarize the learning curve.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks so much. Just looking at the time, I think let's open this up. Let's have a chit chat with the audience. Students, you can either post questions on the chat channel, or you can unmute yourself and then ask our guests directly. Yeah, who would like to go first? Okay, or maybe I can start while they type into the chat channel or think about the questions. I've to share with you both. Sometimes I have students writing their reflection journals on the topic of entrepreneurship, and some of them tell me, Mr. Wilson, I don't think I'm cut out to be an entrepreneur because I am risk adverse. Full stop. And then I'm like, oh, there's a bit of truth in that statement, but I was thinking, oh, but that's such a missed opportunity kind of thing. So I'd like to ask both of you, as an entrepreneur, do you consider yourself a risk taker, and what's your relationship with risk?
Sure. Should I go first?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think of course it's I mean it's no secret that trying to start a company of your own is a risk, but uh, I think what really got me to do all of this was that it's no matter what, whether it actually takes off as a company and turns into a profitable business or not, uh, what what is there are certain things that can never be taken away from you, and those are the lessons that you learn. Be it just sheer knowledge about industries, about problem areas, or about how to build a team or how to turn your technology into a product. All of these lessons are learned at such a high pace. There's no other way you could possibly do that, right? And if you're someone who really deeply cares about learning or satiating curiosity, it's I wouldn't call it a non-factor, but I would say it wouldn't be on the top of your mind all the time. Okay, is this going to succeed or is this going to fail? I'm not sure how Som sees this, but you're not always so worried about oh, is this going to succeed or is this going to fail? But you're more invested in, okay, how do we solve this? How do we solve these micro problems so that we can turn this into a product? And you're not alone, right? You have a team. Of course, it's hard to find a team, as Som also shared with us. But once you have those folks with it's a lot more fun, right? It's much more fun dealing with hard problems with the team than just by yourself. So all of these things, I think it's just the focus on process and the focus on seeing learning as the reward is what really keeps me going. But I'd also love what Som has to say.
Right. So that's a very good question. So it's definitely there is an element of risk over there. But when I started my journey, I looked at the odds, like what's the worst that can happen, right? The worst is that the startup will not work out. I'll go back and find a job. But what I would have learned in the process, I would not have probably learned if I had continued with the job. I had a pretty well-paying corporate job, and I gave it up all for the startup. And the amount that I have learned in the last 2 years, probably I would not have learned 10 years if I have been in the corporate. So even if the startup doesn't work out, there is a significant upside in terms of the other skills and the experience that you get in the process, which is very difficult to learn and get exposure to otherwise. So it's a calculated risk, like everything else. Like even if you get a job offer tomorrow, is it the right job for you? Is it the right company? There's still an element of risk over there.
All right. Thanks so much. Okay, let's jump into the first question from the audience. For small flower crops such as rice, is it possible for us to use drones to do pollination?
I think the one better way of putting that question is, do you need to use drones for those kind of crops? And the answer is, strictly speaking, no. Because rice is a crop which is naturally, pollinated by wind. So, the inflorescence, basically the flowers of rice are very, very, different from what you see for fruit crops, all right, such as, let's say strawberries or tomatoes. And even the pollen grains are such that are more easily transported with wind. So the crop has naturally evolved to be pollinated by wind, right? And that also goes for other cereal crops like wheat, soybean, and so on. So largely speaking, these staple crops are best pollinated in the nature. And I mean, sure, there can be some help with additional or external agencies, but it's not really going to change much. Your yields are not going to change by much. So as such, these staple crops do not need external aid for pollination. However, having said that, I said all of this in the context of just growing these grains to sell directly in the market. But if you look at seed production of these grains, then yes, there's an element of cross pollination involved there, right? Because for example, if you look at using these crops to grow seeds from them, you have to cross pollinate two specific varieties so that your seeds have certain properties in them, right? And that process involves cross pollination, which is very targeted. You have to cross variety A with variety B, and that process is almost entirely done manually right now. So that's exactly where we are looking to use our solution for cross pollination, but that would be at a later stage because cross pollination is more complex. But long story short, do crops like rice and wheat need support for pollination just to sell those grains? No.
Okay, thanks for that. Next question, may I ask both founders' point of view on having the agriculture industry going hyper local? Maybe we can for the audience who doesn't know what hyper local mean, could you give like sort of your take on what is hyper local and share your views?
Sure. So hyperlocal is something which is grown within a certain radius of where you live. That is something that I would define as hyperlocal. So interesting thing is that the trend of going local is increasing, and you can see through our platform also. Even in the different Asian markets, there is more and more demand for local producers, and that's driven by multiple things. One is what Siddharth already touched upon, that we need to grow food close to where we live. And that helps us in getting the supplies quickly. There is less wastage and there is less drop. And also on the other hand, if a food is grown hyper local, it comes into the stores quickly. You don't need to preserve it. You don't need to process it. You can you can remove it from the tree when it's totally ripe. You don't need to remove it at a stage when it's not completely ripe, so that it can survive the long supply chain. So we see that definitely it is a trend which is on the uprise from the consumer side. And once the consumers start asking for something, the industry has to react in one way or the other.
Right. Siddharth?
Yeah, I think certainly, I think as Som has already pointed out, the foundation for this industry, which is controlled environment agriculture, is actually driven by by demand. People want to eat more local food, and it's the core premise of something like indoor vertical farming. So I think Som has mostly covered the premise. But what I'd also like to add is that we just also have to note that food is such a complex web of nodes, and there's so many food products that there's only so many that you can actually grow closer to cities. So we also have to be wise in choosing what are these crops or products that you want to grow closer to cities. Because if you say that, okay, we want to grow rice and wheat close to cities, then that's not so pragmatic. But what's the smart thing to do is as Som pointed out, is to grow more products which have a shorter shelf life and which are more perishable closer to cities, because that makes more sense economically as well. And you don't really need to grow staples close to cities because they have a very long storage life. So the motivation to grow is those products that really need to be in close proximity to the consumers.
Right. Okay, thanks for that. Siddharth, I think this is for you. Designated drones will be used in indoor farm. Can they be used in the field outside?
Well, yes and no. I kind of hate that phrase, but but yeah. So the thing is, we have two different platforms, right? So there's one platform that has been developed for indoor vertical farming, which is very small. It's palm size. It's one of those that I showed in the slide deck. So it's just 28 grams in weight, right? So it's if there's a draft of wind, then it's going to lose its trajectory, and it's going to be very hard to recover. So can that drone do pollination effectively outdoors? Not really. But we also have another platform which is better suited for greenhouses, because you need something which has longer range, which means the drone needs to be able to carry bigger batteries, which means it's slightly bigger in size. So that particular drone platform may be suited for outdoor, let's say, pollination. But then one also has to think about, outdoor pollination as a completely different ball game, because the kind of crops that need support with pollination outdoors happen to be orchard crops, right? So these are big trees, and I'm talking about crops like apple, almond, pear, cherry, and so on, and also avocados for that matter. So it's a different morphology, which means you need a different robotics approach to pollinate. We haven't extensively done a deep dive in this sector yet, because we don't have easy access to that market. But one has to think critically, what's the best approach? What kind of platform is best suited for pollination outdoors? Drones could be it. I don't know, frankly, but it may not be the only one. There could be other ground vehicle based approaches that might also work as well.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, it requires so much thinking to answer that simple question. Okay, next question. Stephanie asks, is this technology able to find out which hydroponic vegetables are most purchased by locals in Singapore and elsewhere? I think this question is for Som.
Has to be.
Right. So using our platform, we can, of course, say which are the vegetables or the ones which are the consumers most prefer. But if it's just about finding out which is the most purchased, which is around the sales data, I mean, my recommendation would be that we can directly check with the stores and get an understanding from them. That would be the simplest and the easiest way rather than going the big data route and the AI route. But if the question is around like, okay, these are the top 4 and 5 hydroponic vegetables that are selling in Singapore, which is the 6th and the 7th and the 8th one which should be introduced in the market, then we should use an analytics and an AI tool where we can use the prediction element to identify, okay, these are the next 3 after the top 5 that probably we should be targeting.
Okay. Thanks for that. Any final, I think we've got time for, I think, one last question. Okay, I just got one last question. I just need to ask this because I've got the one startup team. I think they're not here, so they have asked me to ask on their behalf. They are creating this alternative protein from cricket flour, right? To create this tasty, nutritious, and environmentally friendly protein bar, right? So how it's going to be like a new sort of a new product, right? Using cricket, right? To come up with this protein bar. How would you approach going to market with this?
Right. So, I mean, it's a very exciting product. I personally was a big believer in insect protein. Tried and tested it several times. So, when you are trying to sell alternative source of protein, there are 2 elements to it. One is a group of people who are early adapters, probably like me, who will be ready to try it out, and there will be another group of people who may not be so open to trying out new food. So what we have seen is that traditionally people are very conservative when it comes to food. Food preferences are very much inspired by the local cultural taste preferences and the kind of food they have been eaten and exposed to. Unfortunately, that's how it is. So to target that group of people, which are typically bigger than the other group of people who are early innovators or adapters, maybe they should not talk so much about the insect piece. I mean, it should be, I mean, insect protein, of course, the alternative protein is the main USP, but the product in which they sell it, it should not be in the form of a insect. So you should not sell it like the fried insects, where you can see actually the crickets or the larva, but it should be in the form of a flower, and then mention that, okay, it has alternative sources, and in the back you can mention that it is coming from cricket or soldier fries or whatever.
Right. Okay, thanks for that. I'll definitely give them that tip. I think one last question. How about strawberry? Can we try to use drones to do pollination?
Yes, absolutely. That's exactly what we've started our proof of concept with. And for instance, if in our own office we have a test bed of strawberry plants, that's where we pollinate day in and day out, and then we harvest those berries for lunch. So it's something that we've been doing for a while. It's what we'll also start our pilot trials with. So hopefully in the next month we can get started with one of the companies in Singapore to pollinate their strawberry plants in their pilot farm. So yes, absolutely, strawberry is one of the major crops that we've worked on so far.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I think that's about all the time that we have. Before we end, I would like to just do a quick shout out to the students and audience here today. If you have any business ideas, maybe not sure it'll work, or not sure what to do the next step, right? Do drop us an email. Help startup@rp.edu.sg. Let me just paste this in the group chat. Yep. So, or if you have any interest in entrepreneurship, just follow us on Instagram. We put out a lot of interesting concepts, some tips and tricks regularly. So that's that. And one last point, we have launched the Idea Entrepreneurial Challenge, our yearly RP-wide startup competition. This year, as you can see, bigger prizes, bigger sponsors as well. Two categories, student category for our PET students here, open category for CET students and our alumni. So yeah, looking forward to your submissions. Yep. Let me, before we end, just a final request. Can the students just switch on their cameras and for us to take a picture for memory's sake? Students, are you in school? Can you turn on your cameras? I'm feeling a bit lonely here.
We are actually at home.
Yeah, home. Okay. Okay.
I think the rooms are too messy, Wilson. Let's
okay. Yeah, let's spare them. Okay, with that, thank you everyone. Thanks so much, Siddharth and Som. All the best. We'll catch up again. I'm sure I'll be seeing you guys around. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot for having us.
Bye.
Bye-bye.